Hey there, welcome. This is an eclipse special, a total solar eclipse special for the total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo, which is happening at 20 degrees on the 12th of August. Now, ordinarily, I'm following slides that look very much like these, which tell us all about the exact aspects happening and also about the moon aspects happening. And as you can see on the 12th, we've got a lot. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exact aspects plus a total solar eclipse and 2 exact moon aspects. So it's a pretty busy one. And if you listen to my Sunday show, you might have remembered me saying that I see the aspects, they come in slowly and then they come into that fulcrum point or that real sort of like tightness where they come into that exact moment of being, if like, for instance, Mercury in opposition to Pluto, coming in exactly, and then they start to fade away. What this means is we're always living in this soup of layered aspects that sort of come into a crescendo, a peak moment of activity, a peak energetic, and then they start to ease off. Well, you can see on the 12th, we're in a peak moment. Now, I could just look at Wednesday's forecast and that would be it. But I think that everything's about a journey, and talking about layered aspects, I also think the moons are layering meanings. If you remember the full moon in Aquarius on the 29th of July, it was pretty hard hitting. That set the scene for the next 2 weeks. And then we've got the total solar eclipse in Leo tomorrow on the 12th of August, setting the scene for another 2 weeks. And then we've got the total lunar eclipse on the 28th in the sign of Pisces, again, setting the scene for another 2 weeks, actually, until the next eclipse comes along as well. So it's a pretty big one, that one. With these eclipses, I always think they're part of an ongoing story. And so what I would like to do in this forecast, and I'm going to chapter it, so if you don't want to look back to look forwards, then just skip ahead to the bit that you need. But what I'm proposing here is that I'm going to take a little look back at the previous moon to see what it was representing so we can understand this moon and so that we get to understand the following moon. In fact, I'll be honest, I've already looked at this journey a couple of weeks ago, and I shared it within my community because I share my advanced thoughts. Like, you know, I always put it to my community first and test it out. And we've all been feeling what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. And, you know, if I'm speaking from my own personal experience, I really think that since that last full moon, lots of stuff has been awakening within me. I felt so many personal changes and lots of stuff has come up that I didn't even know was a problem or was there. It's not that I've gone looking for things, but just through the course of the day, something comes up. It doesn't quite feel right. And then before I know it, there's been this like cascade of information, like old memories resurfacing and things like that. So, you know, and I know within my group, there's lots of people who've been reporting similar things. So I really think that we've been in a period of revelation and that we're coming into this time of the construction and then coming into a time later on this month where we're crossing over, not necessarily to say we're all going to, you know, cross over to the other side, but I see that we're marking the ending of something. And so that's what I want to explore today. So if you'll permit me, I'm going to start with this. I should also say, when I look at full moons and new moons and eclipses, I often look at the Sabian symbols. I also often look at the asteroids. I'm only going to do that for the total solar eclipse. I already did that for the full moon in Aquarius. You can check that out in a previous episode if you so desire. So this is what I'm mostly focusing on, and it is going to get a bit out there, you know, with the Sabian symbol and extra asteroids I've put in to emphasize the bigger story. I always think these moments in time are moments where we can expand. There's a richness beyond the planets, and that's what I'm hoping will come out in this. So last thing, if you can hear a slight disturbance, it's because I've got this fan on. It's really hot here in Portugal today. And I fear I'm just going to melt away and just like go into this pink sweaty mess. So I'm trying to minimize that as much as possible. Please forgive any disturbance from my fan. So let's start then with a quick look at why I think this was a revelationary time. So on the 29th of July, you might recall this now, we had Jupiter Cazimi exactly happen a few moments before the full moon. And also on that day, the moon made a conjunction to Pluto and then just left that conjunction ever so slightly, but was still very much in a tight conjunction with Pluto. So we had this strong Pluto-Jupiter opposition, which is actually really eased out of now, which is great. Jupiter's really sort of like moving out of the way, and Pluto, they're you'll see when I look at the next, when I look at the eclipse charts. But Jupiter and the Sun are really suggesting at the time of the full moon that there's like big inspiration, big new change, big realizations for growth, a really big desire to be growing and creative. Like Leo is a very playful sign, and it's very central. It's asking us all to stand up and be a central figure in our own lives, to stop self-abandonment, which is a huge, huge message. And of course, when we start doing that, we'll start realizing where we have abandoned ourselves. And hence, this is where I'm coming to now. With the moon in Aquarius, Aquarius is interesting because, and it's got lots of amazing qualities, but one of the things it does tend to do is abandon the personal. It talks about the brotherhood and the sisterhood and the collective identity, but not the personal identity. And Pluto in Aquarius is certainly, I think, showing up to deconstruct our personalities as much as possible. Like people might be losing livelihoods or losing relevance as AI has come in. That could be perceived. I'm not saying they are, by the way. I still put a lot more energy and faith in humanity. I think humanity is who we are. It's where we're going. However, like transhumanism has been a really big theme coming in, and the whole theme of letting go of sovereignty and not having the choice of life and death situations. I think it's been huge. And so the moon coming into a conjunction with Pluto is almost like this emotional, first of all, like trying to control outcomes. Like Pluto absolutely wants to control things. And, the moon and Pluto, when they come into conjunctions, can show times when we're really gripping on to keep things as wanted. But it's like there's this grip to hold on to a solution for everybody, but not a solution for any actual person, which is interesting because Jupiter and the Sun are advocating for something completely different, where we advocate for ourselves and where we show up in our lives. So it's a really big polarity, really like stretching us apart. The nodal change was occurring just before in a sextile to Chiron, suggesting that karmic healing was about to take place, and that we might be putting right the wrongs, not just from your own life, but through your life and the decades preceding it and the generations, that these generational patterns could be coming up and we're taking responsibility for them, almost like drawing a line and saying, enough, this pattern is not going to go beyond here. Which is huge. And then the moon and Pluto also in like Pluto and Uranus in an exact trine is really showing where the power is being broken down and also being transformed by technology. And that could actually be happening because of the technology. And then Jupiter and the Sun in two trines, one to Neptune and one to Saturn. So we're imagining something really vivid and creative and off the wall, and also considering how to make things real. So we're really reimagining reality as far as I can see. So this is huge, like really, really big moment. And I think with all of these, that like the Sun and the Moon and Pluto and Jupiter, Pluto's the start of Bubble's basket, or the boat as I affectionately call it. And Jupiter is kind of leading the way out of it. And this was just a huge full moon. So yeah, that's why I think it's revelatory. Now, when we look, and just in case, like some other themes that have come out that people have spoken about is how secrets have been revealed. I've noticed it being very, very unsettling, and I've also been observing inner and outer power games. So I've also noticed where I had inner power games at play, but also really got to see other people's inner power games that were put outer towards me. So it's been a real sort of unsettling but fascinating time. Now, if we look at the total solar eclipse, this is also the day when Pluto goes out of bounds in a southerly direction. Again, I've actually got a video in my community in the Hangout section of the classroom, which you can go and have a look at if you're interested. I am probably going to record something about Pluto out of bounds for all the signs. But there's no immediate rush. You know, Pluto's going to be out of bounds on and off for the next 10 years. So it's not something that's like here today and gone tomorrow. It's very, very big. But this is happening on the day of the total solar eclipse. And this is the first time it's gone out of bounds since the 1950s. And I might need to correct something because I think I mentioned it yesterday or the day before in a daily. And I suggested it hadn't been out of bounds for 50 years, but it's since the 1950s. And it hasn't been out of bounds in a southerly direction since the late 1800s. So it's huge. And it's definitely got a meaning, a very distinct meaning about the return of power, claiming back power. In the 1930s to early 1950s, when Pluto was out of bounds, it was north, and it was about power claiming itself. It was about like the conglomerations and corporations, and this like almost the weird thing is, as I'm thinking about this, all I can see are like clumping blood cells. I don't know if you've seen any of those like slides of what healthy looking blood looks like and what sticky blood looks like, you know, where all of the little blood cells all start to clump together. That's how I think of Pluto out of bounds in the northerly direction. Everything starts sticking together and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, almost like a big old blood clot. But what I mean by that blood clot is it's like governments, corporations, all kind of sticking together and accumulating another little cell into its big clot. It's got this kind of really grasping energy. So that was the last time that we had Pluto out of bounds. And so that was when like power was consolidating itself, but we are coming to a time of power decentralizing. And it's like very much like in the 1800s, late 1800s, with the French Revolution, the American Civil War, and something going on in Haiti as well. The revolutionary kind of energies. And so that's what is coming in. And it happens to be starting on the day of the total solar eclipse in Leo. No pressure. Now, the core aspects, you know, I've already mentioned there's two aspects, the moon in a conjunction to Jupiter. That happens just before. The moon makes a trine to Saturn. To me, the moon is knuckling down and committing to growth and security. So this solar eclipse is absolutely talking about us getting stronger, not weaker. Then there's Mercury in an opposition to Pluto. Mercury has taken Jupiter's place. Mercury in a trine to Neptune. Venus in a trine to Uranus. Mars in a sextile to Chiron. Lots of really hard-hitting energies. I'm not going to talk about these so much because they are going to come up in the conversations over the whole course of this week anyway. But what I notice, and this is a big change, is this moon, and it's a new moon, so it's about new starts. It's in the sign of Leo, so it's about sovereignty and your own personality and being playful and being powerful and taking up space. But look, it's not connected to the basket or the boat anymore. In fact, that's Pluto out of bounds. In fact, the basket that we have known is now transformed. It's now got an extra like node on it, or an extra body connecting to it. But this new moon, this solar eclipse, is still nearby, but it's transformed. It's not as difficult as it was before. But now this this particular moment, we've also got a Pluto, Venus and Uranus trine, which I think is really encouraging us to reinvent. I think I spoke about this yesterday, reinvent a feeling of freedom away from control and work out a different relationship to it. Interestingly, Uranus and Pluto were together in the 1960s. People born, I think, between 1964 and 1967, they'll have this Uranus-Pluto conjunction in their birth charts. This time is for you. Now that these guys are in a trine together and Venus setting it off, which I think is lovely, it's really showing you how you can get true independence and feel powerfully independent rather than needing to run from things to feel free. You're now able to, I think, stand in power and also feel independent. So it's been quite a journey for your generation. So we've gone from the boat and now we've come into the granny knickers, as I've described them. But this is a solar eclipse that's going to pack some punch. So this is the Sabian symbol for it. And if you are new to Sabian symbols, there's 360 degrees in the zodiac. Each one of those degrees has got a channeled message. And if you go to sabiansymbols.com, it's Linda Hill's website, there is one meaning per degree. And if you put in the degree that you're looking for, this one is 20 in the sign of Leo, 2002. It always gets rounded up to the next one. You don't have to round it up. Linda's website will do it. I will put a shout out to her book as well. It's worth getting. There's a lot more information in her book. But this is talking about an additional energy that this total solar eclipse is also bringing into play. And it's really quite funny to read. I've never ever seen this one before. Intoxicated chickens dizzily flap their wings trying to fly. This symbol can indicate the loss of reality, that certainly feels right, or rational reactions. It often shows not being in touch with what's realistically possible and what's worth trying. There can be an attempt to do too much or too soon, or before maturing enough to be capable of doing it. Still, trying to do things that are outside of one's natural sphere can be a good thing, as long as you don't overreach and cause damage. Sometimes first attempts at a new experience may prove less than elegant or skillful. Soon you'll look back with amusement at these early attempts. Find enjoyment in the intoxication, but come back to earth when these feelings vanish. False courage, inexperience, trying to do things beyond the bounds. Interesting that the bounds come up, seeing as Pluto's gone out of bounds, beyond the bounds of possibility, capability, or responsibility. Taking drugs, indulging in alcohol, losing reality. This is where it goes really out of control, where there's giddiness and lightheadedness, unwanted side effects of trying too much too soon, getting nowhere, getting out of it, escaping reality, manic reactions. So this solar eclipse is, I think, bringing us to this stage of starting something new, where we're getting ready to build something new. Did you remember I called this the construction? Because I really think this is about constructing something. We've already got some new ideas. The revelation over the last 2 weeks has definitely, for me and some of the people I've been talking to, it's brought up this feeling of, okay, this new information's come out. That means my current plan as I see it is not correct. I need to shift my focus. I need to pivot somewhat, to get back on track. And so to me, this is pivoting. This is helping you try something new. And of course, when you try something new, it's going to be clunky at first. It's not going to be exact. It's not going to be correct. And it might still need tweaking. And that's okay. But it's important not to really indulge, like to numb yourself if you're feeling out of control right now, because the sort of losing reality side of this, or escaping reality and having those manic reactions that the intoxicated chickens are dizzily doing, to me, this is saying, give it a go. Try your new possibility, but don't put really hard and high and heavy expectations on you. So let's have a look now at some of the asteroids or important points I think are relevant to this conversation. Now, normally I really want things to be very conjunct or exactly square or exactly opposite. to the moon. But when I was looking at the degrees, I was thinking, well, hang on a sec. Lilith is at 26 degrees and Eris is at 25 degrees of the fellow fire signs. And Lilith and Eris are real shit-kicking female archetypes. And they're almost in an exact trine at the moment in the fire signs, giving fire sign people, especially if you've got things in your chart in the late degrees of Sagittarius. I know loads of people in my community have got ascendants and moons and suns around this point, and that's most likely because it's my community and my sun is at 27 degrees Sagittarius. That figures, like attracts like. And maybe you have too. Or you might have something in the late degrees of Aries or Leo, because that's really pulling us into this very sort of empowered moment. Now, let's just share a little bit about Lilith and Eris as to why it's important. So both Lilith and Eris, they share something in as much as they're really peeved about being ignored, really peeved. They've been kind of cast out of, and in fact, their stories are kind of similar, only Eris takes it to a whole different level. I mean, Eris, she's like a goddess of strife. I mean, she absolutely wants to punish people and situations that have unfairly cast her out. She's so peevish. Whereas Lilith, there are different types of Lilith. And so we've got Black Moon Lilith, we've got Dark Moon Lilith, we've got Asteroid Lilith, and they all have slightly different personas. There's something slightly different about them. The three of them together, there's a really great article, actually. Let me see if I can find, I've gone to it many times. Dark Star Astrology. She talks about the three Liliths, the lunar apogee, asteroid, and ghost. Dark Star Astrology. Check it out. I think it's really good. She's done a lot of work there. It's amazing. I go back to that article quite a lot. But Lilith is essentially feeling rejected. And, as many of us do, when we feel rejected, we go ahead and we reject everyone around us. And we absolutely try and mess things up. We get very angry. It's like an absolute resentment fest. It's not necessarily bringing out the best in us when this happens. And so we've got Eris, who's being rejected and cast out. We've got Lilith, who's been rejected and cast out. And both of them have got incredible levels of resentment and anger. Now, why is this important? Well, I think this new moon is also bringing out some level of empowerment. That's not to say that resentment and like seething anger is something that we might encourage at this time. However, I always think that resentment and that anger, that serious anger and that desire for vengeance, which I really see that Eris has, like in sowing her discord and strife. When we look underneath it, it's not anger, it's grief, it's sadness, it's sorrow. And so what I see here with this is the new moon in Leo, which is a total solar eclipse, and the fact that we've got the big old granny knickers that I was talking about just here around the outside. I just think the movement of things right now is bringing up those hidden energies to be metabolized, to be processed, to be understood, and to be let go of, to be transformed. And so I think the anger and resentment of Lilith and the need to destroy that comes from Eris, I think they're symptomatic of being snubbed and hurt. And I think the hurt is going to come up. And it's a much more female thing. And that's why I'm mentioning it, because no disrespect to you men who follow me, but it's mainly women that follow me. It's like 80% women, I think. And so this might really ring a bell. You might realize where you felt excluded or upset. So this is something that I think is coming out. And of course, I think we all have a feminine side and we all have, a more yangy side. We have the yin and the yang within us. And And, you know, I think we've all been rejected at some point or overlooked, and overlooked in an unfair way. So I think that's going to come up in quite a big way. Hence why I've included it. But we've also got this, and I was speaking about Osiris and Isis in terms of the 8-8 forecast that I did in the story of Osiris. Osiris and Isis are really, really close to this eclipse. They're at 19 degrees and 17 degrees, but given their story and about the return of Sirius and the return of Orion in the sky around this time, it seemed really, really relevant. So there's a story of Osiris, who was magnificent. He was the king of Egypt, or like the most divine being, ripped to pieces by his brother, all his pieces ripped apart and hidden. Isis, his beloved, went searching, found all the pieces and brought him together using her own magic. She then conceived, conceived and birthed Horus from mounting her reconstructed Osiris, and Horus became the next king. To me, this is a story, a huge story of how we go through an ego death. You know, we may get to a certain level and feel really, really comfortable, and we go through an ego death, we feel ripped to pieces. Maybe we are ripping ourselves to pieces. And then there's a part of us that starts to bring us back together, the reintegration. And in that reintegration comes a rebirth. So to me, this is a huge story about us birthing again and coming out. And maybe it's our resentment, and maybe it's our anguish and our desolation of having been overlooked. That is the thing that has ripped us to pieces. Ever thought that? I have, certainly. And so this is, again, another rejection story coming good, being processed and understood. Now it gets even more interesting when we put in Hephaistos. He was rejected by his mother, who was Hera. And he was rejected because he was seen as disfigured. But he became a blacksmith to the gods, and he was ingenious. You know, he created some really incredible contraptions, and he's associated with the sheer sort of anger to like create things, you know, and just how the energy of creation can be very masculine. And he's associated with fire because that's what obviously melts the metal and allows him to work with metal. And he's associated with Mount Etna and volcanoes. And it's interesting because just before I started recording, my husband said, oh my God, there were 2 earthquakes. And then we've got the other asteroid that I've put in just because its name was interesting to me. I did a search to see if it was related to a god or goddess or myth and couldn't find anything. But I'm taking it to represent the corporate world. So this is about the industrialization. That's how I'm reading this. And it's showing up almost in exact opposition to Osiris, you know, who was the beloved divine king. And the industrialism is showing up in opposition to it, in opposition to the total solar eclipse. What are the chances that on the day when Pluto goes out of bounds and people start to reclaim their power, that we get this very powerful total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo about us reclaiming our sovereignty and our personality and showing up in our lives? And we're showing up and recognizing the industry, the thing that maybe has helped us so much, has also become a foe. And so there is a real sort of dynamic struggle between the idea of the markets and how far the markets will go against us. Like anywhere where somebody is trying to make money above being a human, we're going to have real big difficulties. And so it's interesting that we've got this T-square. Because this T-square, again, so we've got these 2 ladies talking about sadness of rejection and the grief of rejection, and then the fire that comes from that rejection, which actually brings you up the emotional scale. Because if you're in grief, especially in a kind of stuck grief, we can be absolutely unmoving. We can absolutely be stuck in place, sort of cut off from our senses. Like when we get angry and into resentment, we come up the emotional scale because we start to move things. We get a strong emotion. Like Hephaistos, he was rejected, but he used his fiery creativity to create things that would be useful. And then we've got Osiris and Isis grieving her lost husband who was stolen from her. And she put him back together to rebirth. So I think this total solar eclipse is very, very strong. Now, where is this going? So when I think about all of these energies that I've mentioned about this total solar eclipse, I think this is about the reconstruction or the construction. It feels like we are reconstructing from a place of released grief and hurt and upset, that absolute hurt towards ourselves, you know, where something has tried to crush us, and it's the reconstruction. Like Hephaistos is wanting to be practical and to create something. This new moon in Leo with Osiris and Isis is about the reconstruction. Maybe we're reconstructing things away from industry. Remember the Sabian symbol about the chickens losing their composure. You know, that was encouraging us to try something new, even if it feels out of bounds of possibility. Give it a go. Even if you don't get it right, you're pivoting somehow. You're starting to reconstruct your life. So I think this eclipse is about the reconstruction and the construction, designing something new, pivoting things that can't continue. So we make the changes. We make the changes now. And that's what I think is coming in. Now, if we move a little further to the next eclipse, it's coming up on the 28th. It's going to look very different because at that point, there's no basket, boat, or granny knickers, although they are going to be back at the end of September. Instead, what we've got is a minor grand trine between Pluto to Neptune to Uranus. And that's going to stay with us as a base energy for quite some time. It's going to be powering us and seeding the next generation. So that's interesting. But the big thing that I see with this eclipse is, and it's once you see it, you can't unsee it. It is, of course, that this full moon eclipse is almost in an exact square to Uranus. And Uranus, God of the heavens, and consciousness, is wanting to break things down and move on. And that's why I really think that this is about the crossing. This is where, after constructing, you know, starting to pivot on our life and like starting to build it in a new shape, I think we're starting to break from anything that doesn't hold that energy, that doesn't hold that image, that doesn't hold the vibration of our new set point. So I see that we're in a new direction. I'm also thinking of it because it's a full moon in Pisces, and Pisces is all about the ocean and all about the dissolution, like where we're dissolving things. It's about breaking away from the past, as far as I can see. So I see that we're setting sail in a new direction. We're moving on. And yeah, that could be sad. It could be difficult. But to me, it feels like a necessity. So they're the energies I really see that are taking place right now at the time of this solar eclipse. I don't know what plans you've got to reconstruct your life or construct it in a new way, pivot, orient your direction. I mean, when we think about the layered effects of everything we've experienced this year, like Neptune changing signs into Eris, Saturn changing signs into Eris, both of them making a conjunction at 0. Eris was pretty big. Uranus going into Gemini, Chiron, where is he? Going into Taurus for a few months. The North nodes changing into Aquarius. These are all huge. And then, of course, the basket, the boat, the very exact energetics, the constellated planets. You can see why this year has a much higher temperature or a much higher frequency or a very sort of different rhythm to previous years. I really think we're at a crossing point here, pardon the pun with this one. And that's why I think we are in this stage. We've been through the revelation already. I think we've learned lots over the last couple of weeks. I'm sure more is going to come out, but we've learned enough, I think, to set us on a new path. We're now wanting to construct a new journey for ourselves, and we've got a lot more confidence to do that. I really do think that. And of course, now Jupiter is really moving out of this opposition, which I think is really helpful. And then we're coming to that total lunar eclipse at the end of the month, where we're going to be crossing over and cutting ties with anything that's holding us back into that old consciousness, so that we can really genuinely move forwards unabashed and feeling really confident about our choices. So I hope that's helpful. Not so much of a daily forecast, but more an understanding of the waters we're swimming in right now. So wishing you a beautiful eclipse moment. I hope you enjoy it a lot, and I hope it's meaningful. And I do hope that you're finding a new direction for yourself. If you would like some help in understanding what's going on in your life at a personal level, me and you, and looking at your chart, then just give me a shout. All of my details are below. Feel free to book into my diary and we can meet up real soon. Lots of love. Take care. Bye for now.